All right, I'd like to call the board meeting to order. If you'll join me in a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A roll call.
Neighbors? Here. Young? Dilling?
Here.
Beamsterboer?
Here.
Adamski?
Here.
Doyle?
Here.
Adrianson?
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is a proclamation for Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in September. So I'll read this proclamation real quick here. September is known around the United States as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month and is intended to help raise the visibility of the mental health resources and suicide prevention services available in our community. The goal is to speak openly about the importance of mental health and the impacts of suicide to help remove the surrounding stigmas and to direct those in need to the appropriate support services. Suicidal thoughts can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, religion, or background. And according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death among adults and the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 34 in the United States. 49,476 people died by suicide across the United States in 2022, with an average of 136 suicides completed daily and an estimated 1.6 million suicide attempts in the United States in 2022. Each and every suicide directly impacts a minimum of 100 individuals, including family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, and community members. The Village of Manhattan is no different than any other community across the country, but chooses to publicly place our full support behind local educators, mental health professionals, athletic coaches, law enforcement officers, and parents, as partners in supporting our community and simply being available to one another. National organizations like the American Foundation for Suicide and Suicide Prevention Services are on the front lines of a war that many still refuse to be discussed. As suicide and mental health remain too uncomfortable to talk about, every member of our community should understand that throughout life's struggles, we all need the occasional reminder that we are all fighting our own battles. I encourage all residents to take the time to check in with their family, friends, and neighbors on a regular basis and to honestly communicate their appreciation for their existence by any gesture they deem appropriate. A simple phone call, a message, a handshake, or a hug can go a long way towards helping someone realize that suicide is not the answer. So I, Mike Adrianson, Mayor of the Village of Manhattan, and the Board of Trustees do hereby proclaim that September 2024 be designated as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the Village of Manhattan. Shelley, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor and Village Board, for allowing me to use this forum to share my story about my son, Jackson, and speak about suicide prevention awareness. I appreciate that the Village continues to recognize September as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month every year. One of the most tragic and traumatic losses my husband Chris and I have experienced is the death of our son, Jackson. His death means the loss of more than just a precious life. It represents the loss of future experiences and future hopes. Chris and I were not prepared for the loss of Jackson, and when it happened, our world changed forever. The grief, guilt, and anguish we feel is acute and everlasting. Jackson was just 15 years old when he took his own life on June 28, 2020. The troubling part of it all is that we had no warning signs or red flags to recognize that he needed help. It's difficult to not feel failure as a parent, to feel like we didn't protect him. Looking back, Jackson's decision to take his life seemed so impulsive. He made a permanent decision based on a temporary feeling. For his family and friends, that decision has been heartbreaking to live with. As we observe September 2024 as Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in the Village of Manhattan, it is important to recognize the significance of this issue in our community. Suicide is a tragic and complex issue that affects individuals, families, and the entire community. In the Village of Manhattan, since January of 2023, we have experienced the heartbreaking loss of 5 lives to suicide, and there have been 20 documented cases of suicide threats or attempts from January 2023 to this present date. These numbers remind us of the urgent need to continue awareness, support, and action. So what can we do to prevent suicide? Increase awareness. Understanding the signs of someone in crisis is crucial. Look out for changes in behavior, mood, or social withdrawal. Encourage open conversations about mental health and let people know that it's okay to seek help. Provide support. Offer emotional support to those who may be struggling. Listen without judgment and encourage them to talk to a mental health professional. Sometimes knowing that someone cares can make all the difference. Promote mental health resources. Ensure that people are always aware of the resources available to them, including hotlines, counseling services, and support groups. Sharing information on where to find help can save lives. Foster a connected community. Strong community ties can provide a safety net for those in crisis. Creating a supportive and inclusive environment where everyone feels valued and connected can help reduce feelings of isolation. And finally, encourage early intervention. The sooner someone receives help, the better their chances of recovery. Encourage friends, family, and community members to seek help early if they notice any signs of mental health struggles. During this month, let's come together to support those in need, raise awareness, and take action to prevent further tragedies. Every life is precious, and together we can work towards a future where no one feels alone in their darkest moments. Thank you. Mayor, can I get a picture with Jackson's family and friends? Okay, to tie the purple and teal ribbons around the parkway trees during the month of September. So if that's okay. I do have ribbons here and some literature and pins for suicide awareness. I want everybody to help themselves and take those with you today. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a comprehensive land use plan presentation by House Levine and Associates.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to check in today. Today we're going to go over a couple of different elements about the comprehensive plan. We're going to talk a little bit about the planning process. Want to go over a brief overview of the public engagement that's been conducted up to this point. We're going to talk about the existing conditions memo. I want to go through the vision, the goals, key plan recommendations, and next steps. So we got a lot to talk about. I am going to go through this about the planning process, the engagement overview, and the existing conditions if you have questions. But the majority of what I wanted to spend time on hopefully was the vision, the goals, and the key recs. So about the planning process, just a reminder, this document, the comprehensive plan, is meant to serve as a blueprint for the next 20 years. It should inform the decisions on development, potential growth, how you want to grow, where you want to grow. It's an establishment of the community's desires, needs, and aspirations. This isn't so much us saying what needs to be done. We're trying to collect as much input as we can throughout the process and coalesce this all into a series of recommendations that help you achieve a lot of what I'm going to talk about here in the next couple of slides. It's a broad range of topics. It's policy, so it's not regulatory, it's not zoning. It's a kind of a high level, 10,000 foot, here's what we want to do for land use, transportation, parks and open space, community facilities, and just bringing all of those different topic points together in one document. Should support and should be used to support future funding opportunities and grant applications. A lot of the studies and a lot of the recommendations that we'll provide in here may result in either capital improvement programs that you may need to consider. It could be, infrastructure improvements. Some of those that you could seek funding for, you could use the comprehensive plan as a checkpoint just to say, this is something that's supported by the community. This is something that we want to see residents, businesses, stakeholders, elected officials. It does help through the funding process to have that documented. The planning process was broken up into 5 steps. We are currently in the existing conditions / planning, plan visioning and key recommendations phase. We're on the bubble only because we're going to go through and talk about existing conditions in the report that we pulled together, but we're also pushing out ahead into some of the initial visioning and goals exercise. We have not, and as I go through this, we have not written plan recommendations yet. We do not have a draft document pulled together. As far as we've gone into planning is to establish the vision and the goals. A lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is collected from the community, from stakeholders, from the visioning workshop, that type of thing. Just a reminder about the village board involvement. I'm going to talk more about this a little bit later, so I won't spend a lot of time. But step 1, we had done a village board presentation. We had a working session with staff and kind of went through different issues, different topic points that we know the plan needed to address. We're here today in what I'm going to call 2A, meeting 2A, which is a presentation of the existing conditions as well as the vision and the goals. We are hoping to come back in October or November to have a working session to go through more so like the future land use plan and some of the more detailed key recommendations the plan will need to address. As I said, we don't have those documents prepared yet. We'd like to work through that with the village board, get your input, make sure we're moving in the right direction before we put too much time into actually writing the plan. But once we have that working session, we should be able to move forward and start writing the document. After that, we'll start going through a review process. So we'll deliver the comprehensive plan, the land use plan elements. You'll get an opportunity to review that. We'll have a presentation. We can talk about adjustments or refinements that are needed. And then ultimately, we'll start moving through the adoption process. So we still have some time. I'll talk a little bit more about timeline when we get there. Okay. Any questions about the process? Any questions about what I've talked about so far? Okay. So I want to go over the public engagement. This is what's been conducted up to this point. There's still some additional opportunities for community engagement and feedback throughout the way. But this is just kind of a high level what we've completed up to this point. We had a village board workshop. We had a business community workshop. We did a key staff workshop, a community visioning workshop, and then we had key stakeholder interviews that were conducted right here. We've had online surveys that have been available and will continue to be available on the project website, which I'll put up in a minute. And there's an online mapping tool, so an ability to go in and identify specific opportunities for key intersection improvements or redevelopment opportunities or places that you wish for more park amenities were available, that type of thing. I did want to zero in just a little bit on the community visioning workshop. As part of that, we did a mapping exercise. We kind of walked through what the goals and the aspirations should be in a comprehensive plan. And people, on maps were able to identify potential roadway connections or amenities that they'd like to see, neighborhoods that they thought, needed better connections into maybe the downtown or into other neighborhoods. We had a series of different topic points that we wanted each group to talk about. We did a presentation at the end. Our team collected all of the maps, all of the writing materials that were prepared during that exercise. And we did summarize it. I'm not going to go through all of this. This is available, I believe, in the packet that you received, and also on the project website, where you can see what the summarized materials are. You can see all the different maps. There were some big ideas that came out of each group. Some of that's been folded into the vision and into the goals, but also some of that has been folded into the key recommendations that we think the plan needs to talk about, something we'll get into in a few minutes. I'll leave this up here. This is a link to the project website, so hla.fyi/Manhattan Comp Plan. This is a good way for people to see what we've been talking about, materials that are being prepared. So as more draft materials are made available, we'll be posting those to the project website. It's a good way for us to get feedback from the community. Not everybody can come to the meeting tonight, or maybe some of the future meetings. So we just want to make sure that we have a checkpoint somewhere where people are able to see what we've been doing and where we're going next. I'm not going to read all of these, but I do anticipate this being a public document, so we'll put this up on the project website. But these are some of the key outreach takeaways. Again, these were in the summaries that we've already created. But this is going to inform some of the discussion that I want to have a little bit later about where some of the recommendations or where some of the topic points are coming from. So this isn't us. This is what we've heard from the community or what we heard from stakeholders in these meetings that we had done leading up to this point. And it was broken up into a couple different categories. Discussions about housing and residential areas, things like limiting growth. So you're going to see conflicting concepts here, and this is stuff that we'll have to address in the plan. Some people want to limit growth and expansion to preserve the rural character. Some people want to identify and direct residential growth to specific areas in the community. Others have said that they want to increase the tax base, so they want to see more commercial or more commercial or industrial uses. We've, even in the visioning exercise, people were very specific about locations that they thought were appropriate. So that's the kind of stuff we'd like to go over as we start working through the future land use plan and identifying what areas, if at all, are appropriate for future investment and future growth. There was talk about light industrial and manufacturing areas, where to concentrate that, where would that be appropriate. If we do have new industrial uses that could help encourage the kind of raising the economic tax base, offsetting some of the burden that residential development may be putting on the village. There was a lot of talk about truck traffic. I would say that was probably a theme in most of the discussions that we had, were just the impacts of truck traffic and the truck route. So 52 coming through, the downtown, but really going through the entire community. So definitely something the plan's going to need to talk about and provide some ideas or solutions or strategies about how to address it. Bike and ped, so bike and pedestrian transportation, both just connecting neighborhoods to the downtown, connecting neighborhoods to parks and open space. That's something that we identified in the existing condition as a challenge. So knowing that that's something that residents want to see or stakeholders want to see is something that we'll continue to keep in mind as we go through this process. Parks, open space, natural areas, that was something that was talked about in a lot of the different meetings. Just making sure that you maintain and enhance Manhattan's parks and open space. Make sure that new residential developments are accommodating those needs for both the future residents, but also if there's adjacent subdivisions, it might be able to support some of the needs for those current residential areas. The community facilities, just continuing to maintain your current facilities, but also make sure that you're timing future facility needs if there is going to be a continued development growth. So if you're seeing more residential, commercial, or industrial uses, making sure that you're able to support your current demand, but also that you're timing out and able to support any future demand that might be coming. And then just some of the other, and they were more just like miscellaneous or other issues. Preserving the current character of Manhattan was something that was said quite a bit. We heard a lot about diversifying the village's revenue services or sources, filling vacant spaces. Many residents identified that rural feel, but hope that future development, if it does occur, doesn't have an impact on that rural feel or that character. So those are just the kinds of things that we want to talk about, both in the vision statement, but also as we start to prepare these goals, are we able to kind of balance that rural feel, that character, with development that could be coming. Any questions about the public engagement summaries? Okay. So for the existing conditions memo, a couple things. It assesses the existing conditions that will have an influence on Manhattan's comprehensive plan. So it's not an everything book report. I think that's one thing when we go through this. There's a lot of existing conditions components that we want to make sure we're documenting that we know will influence the plan's recommendations. It provides a demographic snapshot. It summarizes the village's recent plans and studies, so those that are having a direct impact on the recommendations of the policies that we should be incorporating into our plan. So there might be some stuff that are in some recent documents or documents from 15 years ago that are still relevant, good ideas. We want to move those forward. But there are some that maybe no longer are the development trends, or maybe aren't the community's desires anymore. It is a culmination of field reconnaissance, research, a lot of data that was provided us from the village and from its partners. So we were out doing field work. We pulled from CMAP and census data. So where we can, we're trying to use data to inform our existing conditions, just like we'll try to use that data when we prepare our recommendations for the plan. It describes the existing conditions related to land use, development, transportation, community facilities, and natural areas. It does not contain plan recommendations. So I want to make that very clear. Anywhere in there that it is stated as a recommendation, it would only be from community outreach. So that's why it's been divorced out. So again, we're not into that phase yet. That's something that'll happen in the next steps. This is the table of contents. So I'm going to just go through this. The plan context identifies Manhattan in the region. So you have a regional settings map. It shows a couple of different things. The map on the right is probably the most helpful, although let me see if I can make that a little bigger for you. So the darker orange is your current municipal boundary. The lighter orange is your ETJ. Well, what is our planning area? And then the overall blue line is your ETJ. The thing to keep in mind is just based on Illinois state statute, your ETJ, you're able to plan 1.5 miles away from your current municipal boundary, but also you're able to plan with the boundary agreements that you have with other communities. So you can't plan into another community's municipal boundary, but if you have a boundary agreement, you can plan up to that area. So this plan is going to kind of break it down into 3 pieces. We are going to look at that orange area first. That's your opportunity for infill. That's your periphery development. It's going to be on the edge of infrastructure that's already in place. That lighter orange is going to be what most of the maps in the plan are going to address. But there are going to be some opportunities to look at that blue line. It is very unlikely that in the lifespan of this plan you're able to develop even all of what's in the planning area, but certainly what's in the blue. But the plan still can provide guidance on what, if you do move that direction, what that should look like. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
On your maps, the one on the left, and you look at the key on the bottom of the key that tells you what the colors mean,
Yep.
is there a reason why there is no color code or key line for Joliet boundary agreement?
So it's an Elmwood-Joliet boundary agreement. So it's both. That's what that red line is on the west.
So you consider it both?
Yeah, it's one
Okay.
boundary agreement, exactly.
But just so if the residents look at it, they understand that that is the boundary agreement with both towns.
With both Elmwood and Joliet, correct.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else? Okay. So for demographic profile, I'm not going to go through everything in here, but I did want to highlight a couple of things. Just that your current population, based on the census from 2022, is that you're roughly just over 9,500, or just below 9,500. We know with some recent development and new residential units that have come online, you're likely well over 10,000 at this point. But that's just the data that we have available to us. We're going to continue to work with the village to update that information to make it more kind of ground truth to what you're dealing with today. We did look at some of the housing stock. I mean, it's roughly 71% single family detached. You have 20% of single family attached, like townhomes, row homes, those types of uses. And then it's a mix from there through the other housing types. 10-year housing vacancy, total units change over time. These are all things that we're looking at as we start to think about what types of uses would be appropriate in the future. So what have you been trending? What is the market supporting? And what's likely to happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years? All of that will tie into the plan's recommendations. We also looked at the commuting and labor shed. I don't know that this is so much of an interesting number. I think a lot of this is probably information that you're all very aware of. But that inflow, outflow, that dark blue, just shows you that these are people that live in Manhattan and they're employed outside of Manhattan. So, you know, a lot of communities are trying to get that blue circle a little bit smaller. You'd obviously like to have more people living in and potentially working in the community. It's not an absolute, but it's just something to consider if you can, you know, attract people that can live and work in a community. It does balance that residential and then non-residential use type. In terms of relevant plans that we had reviewed, we went through a couple documents. The 4 that we wanted to highlight were the downtown plan that was just recently adopted, Will Connects, which is the 2040 long-range transportation plan, the Village Center Master Plan from 2011, and then in 2008, your previous comprehensive plan. So there are aspects of the previous comprehensive plan that we would want to carry forward. You know, again, we don't want to just completely rewrite everything for the sake of rewriting it, although 2008 was a very different time, and the plan was written, you know, really in a very different time. So we just want to make sure that we're bringing forward some of the community's desires and aspirations from then. There might be some policies that work, but the downtown master plan is one that we definitely want to fold recommendations and concepts into the comprehensive plan and make sure that these two talk together. For the existing land use and development, we did an assessment of your current existing land use, broke it down into land use designations that we would carry forward into the plan. You know, obviously a majority of the community is designated as agriculture. You can see that lighter yellow is the single family detached and single family attached. The orange pockets in the land use plan, or I'm sorry, in the existing land use map are single family attached and multifamily residential. You have a couple of commercial pockets along 40 or 52, but also along some other corridors, and that's something the plan's going to want to help kind of intersperse that a little bit throughout the area, so not just be targeted along one or two corridors. But also looking at other uses, mixed use, public, semi-public, parks and open space, industrial, transportation, and then also identifying some of the vacant properties. The current zoning ordinance is a factor, so we do look at that. The main thing that we're looking at here is not to change the districts or you know, impact what's happening there. It's just where might the plan be in or out of alignment with the current zoning when we move forward. So just understanding your current zoning districts, what uses are allowed, what's permitted, what specific parcels are identified for now, are things that we'll want to consider when we do start to prepare plan recommendations. One of the last things that we can do is an alignment test and just show your current zoning is this, your existing land use is this, the future land use is recommended to be this. What are some of the challenges that you're going to see with the future land use in the current zoning map being out of alignment? That might require a zoning amendment change, it might require a map change, it might require nothing. So that's the kind of stuff we'll want to identify. We're going to want to minimize the impacts the best that we can. Same thing, we looked at the county zoning, largely agriculture, but just being aware, or the township being aware what's what we're planning into in these larger gray areas that are that planning boundary. Before I jump ahead, any questions about land use? Any questions about the zoning? Okay. Transportation, just looking at the roadway classifications, so your functional classifications for roads. You have minor arterials, major collectors, minor collectors that are cutting through the town. Some of the most, I think, like prevalent ones that we'll talk about are Route 52, what are some of the opportunities along Cedar, Manhattan Road, Smith Road, but there's some other ones, Cherry Hill Road, Ridge Road, where as growth comes not just from Manhattan, but also development pressure from our surrounding communities, and I want to make sure that these roads are able to serve the capacity for the traffic that they may be taking, and they could open up opportunities for development if that's the direction that we want to go. So just understanding what the current capacity challenges might be, and then also what's coming in the future, and making sure that the plan provides some guidance on what that could be. Truck routes, as I mentioned, this was probably one of the more consistent themes in our discussions about different approaches that we could explore for Route 52. How can we minimize the impacts to downtown and some of the residential neighborhoods and commercial corridor that it's cutting through now? You know, what are potential routes? What are some options for then the type of development that could occur around those rerouting? You know, those are all things that a comprehensive plan should be providing some guidance on. So certainly we'll talk about as we get to the plan. Even going back to the 2008 plan, several roads were identified for improvement. So again, it may not be all of these roads, but we'll certainly look at it. It could be a tiered approach, but certainly these roads are ones that we're going to provide a little bit more insight on what they could do based on the capacity they may need to handle with the lane uses that we'll be recommending. Active transportation will be a component, being able to walk, being able to bike, being able to get to these places in more modes than just a car is something that we'll want to make sure we address. And then just how do we support public transit? So you have the Metro Southwest service line, you're the terminus stop. What are some opportunities to kind of leverage that stop You saw how many people, I mean, it was almost half of those that are commuting, not almost half, but a large number, it was about 400, are commuting to Chicago for work. Is that number something that could be increased? Are there other places along the line that could be supported by? Those are all things that we'll look at as we go through the plan. Community facilities, just identifying where your village facilities are, village services, fire and safety, infrastructure, education, library. So all those different functions that a village is responsible for are identified in this plan, or are identified in the existing land use. The plan itself is going to have to start to forecast out areas that might be likely areas for fire and service, or could be like a satellite office or a satellite space, could be additional education facilities needed in the future. And we're not going to go parcel by parcel, but just depending on how much we're talking about in terms of development, you may want to consider locations that need to be set aside, or that the village may want to purchase just down the line, so you have that as an option. Parks and open space, I think this is kind of tough to see on this map. But so we did an assessment of your current parks and open space. So that blue line is your service area. It's a 10-minute walk from a park for those residential units. So the ones that are yellow are walkable. They can get to a park within 10 minutes. Those that are in orange, darker orange, don't have a dedicated public open space. There might be an open space as part of like a retention facility or an open lawn, but these are a bit more programmed, designated parks and open space. This is something that as you start to talk about future residential development, those types of open space or parks should be built into and accommodating the residents that it should be supporting. So it's something that we'll talk about. And then the last section in the existing conditions memo is just talking about natural areas. So you have wetlands and floodplains that are going to be some considerations when you start talking about development. Medellin National Tallgrass Prairie being so close. That was something that came up a lot during outreach as well. Just having that adjacency to such an amazing facility. It's a large open space. Just being able to tie into that is something that we want to be able to take advantage of if we can. So the next step is to kind of switch gears mentally and go into the vision and goals. Any questions about the existing conditions? Okay. All right, so we're shifting, that's like the step. We're gonna walk across this line. We go from existing conditions to, this is the beginning of us starting to think about what needs to be in the plan. These aren't so much as recommendations as they are just giving us some guidance about what the plan's recommendations should be talking about. So again, we haven't written them, but the vision statement is to kind of give us a guiding light of this is what we want the plan to talk about. So a vision statement is the foundation of the plan's goals, the policies, the recommendations. There's going to be some actions that get tied into this down the line. So we want to make sure we have the vision statement right before we move into the rest of this. When I go through this exercise, this isn't a wordsmithing exercise. I know there's some people here who probably want to like cross a T differently or might want to wordsmith a sentence. This is about intent. If you have comments, we'll absolutely take them. But tonight I really want to focus on the intent of the vision statement, not necessarily the grammar or the writing style. But we can always collect that after this exercise is over and go from there. So what I want to do and what I found to be the most successful is I just want to walk through the vision statement as a whole. So I'm going to kind of chunk this out into 7 pieces. We can talk about it, make sure that it looks good before we jump ahead. So this is the first part of the vision statement. Over the coming decades, the Village of Manhattan will continue to embrace its rich history and small town character alongside increasing modern amenities and economic growth. Guided by the motto, Memories with Progress, the Manhattan community will preserve its heritage while embracing opportunities for development and improvement. So do we feel like that is the direction that we want to see the plan going? And again, it's not specific recommendations or policies. It's like a high level. Okay. All right, second part. Manhattan's downtown is already the heart of the community and its historic core. Downtown will continue to offer a diverse mix of shops, restaurants, entertainment options. Surrounding neighborhoods will be characterized by a variety of housing options, walkable streets, multi-use paths, and access to parks and recreation facilities. Okay. I'm going to wait for someone to raise their hand and say, no, I have a comment. How about that? So The village will maintain a balanced economy through a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial land uses. Essential goods and services will easily be accessible in downtown along primary corridors and at local nodes near prominent intersections. So this is one where I think it is important, maybe just take a quick pause. The idea is we do want to balance future uses. It's not the plan's objective to tell you that you must grow, but it is the plan's objective to tell you that if you do grow, if you do decide to grow in the future and accommodate maybe what's coming your direction just with the development trends, that you're balancing those uses, that you're focusing on diversifying your economy, so it's not just residential, but also commercial and industrial uses. And if you do that, let's direct those into specific areas. So that's really the intent of this.
So how long, I agree with your vision statement here, but I think we really need to sit down and go through these plans or pictures that you have and pick the right spots for these commercial and primary corridors.
We agree.
The downtown is the downtown. I mean, we know what that is.
Yep.
But there may be disagreement, there may be agreement upon which part of the outskirts is going to have light industrial compared to residential or estate residential or whatever. I think that's where we have to get that all put together, and then this part of the statement would go with that map. Am I not correct?
You're correct, yep.
So
I think the important thing that we're trying to accomplish here, and I think we are, is just, this should be a statement that we feel is correct. And now maybe even the harder part is then identifying on maps how we achieve this. And that is the next step. It's one of the most challenging parts of a project is, putting this to paper and all coming to the best that we can in agreement about where those commercial nodes should be, where industrial might be appropriate, where residential might be appropriate, different scales of residential might be appropriate. So yeah, that is, after this exercise, next time we meet, I think we're going to go through some initial thoughts of where we think this should go. You're going to give us your feedback. We're going to pull out some maps and kind of work through this.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So the fourth part, residential infill with attractive homes and quiet streets will fill gaps between downtown and distant subdivisions. A variety of housing options will be available within the village, appealing to those from diverse age groups and socioeconomic backgrounds, and ensuring residents can call Manhattan home throughout their careers and lives. So another way of saying to be able to grow in place, age in place. You may start here in a single family, detached, you may find yourself in an attached, you may find yourself in a senior living facility, whatever it might be, but always being able to call Manhattan home. I think that's the main goal here, and also to close the gap between some of the subdivisions that are built a little further to the north. How do we connect those with a lot of the core and the energy that's here in the downtown area? Thoughts? The fifth part, so a well-maintained transportation network, including roads, sidewalks, and trails, will connect neighborhoods, commercial areas, and recreational spaces. Safe roadways will support walking and biking and create an environment that appeals to all. The village's Southwest Service Metro Station and line will continue to support regional access for residents, commuters, and visitors.
Now, would you add to that statement who is going to pay for those?
Who's
For
gonna pay?
instance, I know there a lot of the board, and we're all, I'd say, in agreement with, we want the walking paths and the bike paths, but it comes down to who's going to pay for them. I could see any new subdivision going forward would have to pay its own way in terms of putting them in for us, where it's not coming out of the village's tax money. But with existing tie-ins and existing areas, my opinion is it's a park issue, it's a recreation issue, and that the village is kind of hands off on that. We could just say where we want it to go, but we can't necessarily pay the money to put it all out there. So would that be added to this part of the vision statement of who we feel should be the ones to finance all of this?
I wouldn't add it to the vision statement, but it is a plan's recommendation. I mean, we do need to talk about how these would be funded. This is more of, because these projects were appropriately funded, it happened, right? We're doing it. In the plan, though, we need to say the village is willing to make connections maybe here, here, and here. The village expects that future subdivisions provide the connections from their site to these other neighborhoods or to these other amenities, working with the park district. I mean, those are all things that we can talk about, yeah.
But the way I read that, I kind of feel like it's tying my hands. It's tying our hands as a village board that we're gonna, as a village, we're gonna provide these walking paths and recreational spaces. Okay? We don't provide recreation until we have a park district that
But
provides
we promote
recreation.
it though.
And we
We
don't-
promote
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm all for
Yeah.
promote it.
Yeah, and we don't build roads, and we, for the most part, you maintain some of them, but some of them are county. You don't build residential developments, but you're encouraging it, you're guiding where it should go, but developers, outside forces are going to make these improvements. So I mean, I 100% agree that in the plan's recommendations, we should talk about who is funding or how you would fund these. I mean, if we agree, we can incorporate this into the vision statement that, developers or, builders would be paying for those connections. It's pretty specific, but if that's a concern, we can certainly
it's
add it
too-
in.
Well, my concern is, people are gonna read this vision statement, the first 7 pages or 7 paragraphs, and that's the Holy Bible. This is why we have to look at this so closely.
He's good.
And that if we're adding some language to give us room to negotiate with the park,
I
or
mean-
whoever, the developers to do this part.
Yeah, but it's like anything, when you have a subdivision come in, they do an annexation agreement, we go through everything that they're required to do before we accept it, so it's always negotiable, I feel like. And we've never really put in sidewalks other than SSAs, right? I mean,
Right, that's all
Yeah.
included in the
so everything's kind of fluid. I mean,
Subdivision.
Yeah,
agreement.
because sometimes they'll do cash donations for the park instead of a park, or they might do trails instead of a,
But what we're running into right now is there are areas that don't have bike paths that were given away, so to speak, by the park district in the past that didn't want them, because who's gonna maintain them, who's gonna fix them? They didn't wanna do it, we couldn't afford, we didn't wanna say, all the taxpayers are gonna have to put the money up for this. So you have existing people moving into subdivisions that are gonna read that and say, well, you said you're gonna provide these. I just want to be careful with the language of what we're saying we're going to provide and how it is provided. I'm not against doing
I
it.
just don't think it says that we have to provide everything. That's just me reading it. I read this as just a guideline that we promote walking, we promote recreational spaces, that's part of the plan, open spaces, park spaces. We're not going to pay for everything across the board. I mean, if it's a vacant farmland and someone wants to develop it, they do a proposal to it. Is that, am I going?
Well, what I
wrong, or-
would say to you is this, you just said it, if you put, the village promotes
Yeah.
a well-maintained
We're
transportation.
going to
network.
require them to have bike path
Yeah,
connections and
we would
sidewalks.
promote that, then it's
We're
not a
gonna-
guarantee that we're going to do this. Because people
Okay.
are going to read that as a guarantee. We could say promote, just like you just said, that we promote this being done, and it's a blueprint, but people, when they first read it, and when they first look at it, that's what they're going to expect.
Okay.
I don't know, I guess how you want to read it. I mean, I don't think we have to get in the weeds on this paragraph, but if, does everyone want to add, will not require, or how do you want to, I mean,
I have some thoughts about, I mean, we can do one of two things. You could say the village working with developers and the park or developers, the park district, and the county can do these things. Or you could just say the village will promote. I feel like if you do that, though, we're gonna change the tone on a couple of these other ones too. But, I mean, I get the concern. It's not in the vision statement. Nobody should be reading a vision statement and thinking this is like locked in.
But they do.
This is required. But it's a vision statement. It's not the plan's recommendations. It's looking back after 20 years, all of these things have happened, and we have a well-maintained transportation network. We have, a park system, that type of thing. It's gonna take a lot of partners, not just the village. So I agree that the plan's gonna need to talk about this. There are a couple different ways we can tweak this sentence or these two sentences to address this. Are there other thoughts that we want to incorporate into this slide?
Okay.
what if it was just support the development of biking and create environmental, like, support the development, that doesn't mean that we're developing it, it just means we support you if you're
Yeah.
developing it. So that one word, if you say support the development of walking and biking, maybe something like.
Well-maintained transportation.
Yeah, something like that, that way it's outlined in the first one, that, no, okay, they kind of want us to do it, but we have to provide it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We
I
can-
know you say you didn't want to go into semantics and word for word, but in reality, one word means a lot. There's a difference between shall and may. There's a big difference.
Yep.
And
Code
some of these
policy.
things, there's a big difference between when somebody reads it and almost comes up with that we shall be providing these things, when what you just said, Mike, is perfect.
Yeah.
That we will promote, or whatever language you want to put in there, that gives the option, that lets them know we want this, but we're not going to be the end-all dollar amount person doing it.
Yep. Yeah, and
That's all I'm looking at, is the final amount. And it's not a matter of do we want this or do we not want this. I think we all want it. But we have to be very careful how we reward things around here.
Okay. All right. So move to the next one. Manhattan will prioritize protecting natural resources and enhancing the quality of life for residents. The village will continue to invest in public parks, open spaces, and recreational facilities to promote health and wellness. The village will retain its small-town charm and continue to enjoy the peaceful setting enhanced by surrounding farmland and the Medewin National Tallgrass Prairie. So I'm thinking we may want to tweak the invest in parks and open space based on what we
Yeah, I was
talked
going to
about.
say, you might want to tweak that, village will invest.
The village, yeah, will promote development of, public parks, open spaces, something that we promote the development of, but maybe not investing in it. That word's probably a strong word.
That's a strong word, that the park board member is going to come in, and when you say, I want you to put this bike path in, and it says, your village says, in your vision statement, it says you will invest in doing it. Well, we're not financially investing, we're investing in the planning and the coordination of getting it all done. For the promotion, but it doesn't mean we have to invest the funds. And like you said, one word makes it's a strong word. I agree with you, Mike.
Yeah, it
That's
does.
I'd be very careful with some of the exact language. I know this is just a blueprint, and
Yeah.
that's why we're here to work this out.
No, yeah, you can change it easily now. Instead of printing it, then it'd be,
Right.
Yep.
But you came up with some good terms I think would fit.
yeah.
The last one was just the village will be a welcoming place for people of all ages and backgrounds. Following the policies and recommendations of the comprehensive plan, the village will continue to be known as a thriving community where residents can enjoy a high quality of life, robust economic opportunities, and a strong sense of place while preserving the character and charm that define Manhattan today. Closing thoughts on the vision statement? Okay. I think when you see it all together, I think it reads a little better. Just had to break it up into some slides. So we'll make some tweaks based on this, and we'll refine it and send it back. We'll send it back to Mark, and he can get this out to everybody. So that's the vision statement. The next part I want to go over are the goals. So the goals are broad, long-range desired outcomes. The community's policies and planning efforts should aim to achieve these goals. They're going to be ambitious within the planning topics that require implementable actions to be realized. The goals below, they're not in order by any means, but these are the goals that we have outlined for the plan. So the first one was manage growth through balance. That is tough to read, sorry. Manage growth through balanced residential development and increasing the tax base by accommodating strategic commercial and industrial development. So again, setting the stage for residential development, but also making sure that we're prioritizing and identifying opportunities for commercial and industrial development. So that would be the first goal. Thoughts? Okay. The second goal, provide high-quality housing and neighborhoods for residents in all stages of life, maintaining and expanding the village's reputation as an attractive place to live. So this one's more focused on the housing options. We all go outside. Yeah. That's what we'll do. Show of hands, everybody agree? I mean, I want to spend a little bit of time here. We don't have to wordsmith them again, but I want to make sure that the intent is correct, because we are going to start writing plan recommendations that are hitting these goals and making sure that they're in alignment with the expectations of the board, but also for the community. Okay. Number 3, support downtown local businesses, employers, and innovative industries to strengthen the village's tax base. So again, coming back to that concept of diversifying your tax base, the downtown needs to continue to be a focus, but also looking at other local businesses that are out of the downtown, other employers, and those that you may want to attract. So it could be future employers, future industry, that type of thing. Okay. Number 4, provide a seamless, efficient transportation system that offers good connectivity, reroutes truck traffic around downtown, supports mobility for walking, biking, transit, and driving, and enhances the character of the village. Might be supports the character of the village, but okay. Now I'm doing it. All right, number 5, support the delivery of community services, maintain the village's facilities, and invest in its critical infrastructure to continue to ensure a resilient, sustainable, and high quality of life for the whole community. And maybe we'll be careful here. I think invest in critical infrastructure, I interpret that as in roads or could be potential utilities. I suppose one could also interpret that for like parks and open space, so maybe that's not the right word here, but
Maybe just focus on its critical infrastructure.
yeah. Oops, sorry, we jumped ahead. Focus. Focus on critical. All right, that's good. The last one, offer a complete system of parks and open spaces within walking distance of existing neighborhoods and planned new residential areas that meet the recreational and environmental needs of Manhattan residents and visitors. And maybe this is promote, not offer.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but in terms of the goals for the plan, does this feel that we're touching on the major issues? And again, very high level. So these goals will lead to, many, many different plan recommendations and policies, but they're all going to kind of fit into this bucket of we're trying to achieve one of these 6 goals. Could be multiple goals, but at least one of these 6 goals.
Any questions?
Okay. All right. This section, I want to be really clear here. This is very early. So these are more just like topics, not necessarily, key plan recommendations is probably not even the right word. It's more like key plan topics, things that we know we want to talk about in the plan. A majority of this is coming from the community feedback, stakeholder input, the existing conditions. I would even say there's probably like 60% of what we need to talk about in the plan. We just wanted to kind of get a temperature check. Are there things on here that we agree with? Are there things on here we don't agree with and we don't want to explore? So I only have 2 slides for this. I did want to kind of go through this. So the first one was directing residential development between the historic core and outlying residential subdivisions. That was something that we had heard. So providing, or what I'll call like filling in the gap for residential development. And that's pretty specific. Could just be development, but residential is what we'd heard. So, basically connecting what is north of the downtown to some of the other subdivisions. Does anybody here feel like that's not an appropriate direction to at least explore as a planned topic? Okay. Encourage a variety of housing types and densities and new residential development to support residents of all ages and incomes. So that's another thing, just being able to balance, maybe it's not all single family detached. There's different options that we want to explore. Okay. Balance utilities and municipal services with future growth. That one I would strongly recommend, but that's just something that came up in a couple of different discussions, making sure that we're not getting out over our skis, that we're not building, either residential, commercial, or industrial developments that can't be serviced or will put a significant burden on the village. You're at a tipping point on some of these services as well, where if you make a couple of decisions, you might be requiring some pretty substantial utility improvements. Those are the types of things that the plan should be talking about and making everybody aware of why these decisions are important. Okay. Prioritize new commercial development on existing major corridors and at key intersections to boost the amount of retail and services in the village. I'm going to go back to what we just talked about earlier, though. This is where we're going to put it on a map. And I think this is an easy thing to talk about and to agree with. I think it's when it geographically gets located. That's when we want to be talking about it. What impacts does this have on the surrounding area? What does this mean for the pattern or the future growth direction? Those are things that we're going to want to work through. Construct multi-use trails between residential neighborhoods, downtown, parks and recreational facilities to provide residents with viable active transportation options. Probably want to word this a little differently. Construct is a pretty active tone. So this might be, coordinating with the right partners, making sure that you have multi-use trails identified in appropriate locations to make these connections. That might be the adjustment I make. Thoughts? Is that rewording work? Okay. Reduce vehicle speeds through downtown. That's something that's a discussion that would come with enforcement. So that's something you'd need to work with, police department, make sure that we're all on the same page about what you're requiring there. That would even tie into like truck traffic. I think this is something that we've talked about. There's rerouting it, there's slowing down traffic. There's a lot of different options to, minimizing some of the safety impacts from truck traffic. All right. Another one was minimizing truck traffic along US Highway 52, explore options to reroute around downtown. I think that's a pretty clear discussion point that the plan needs to address. It won't be one solution. I think we'll talk about a couple of different strategies, starting with, just reducing reducing vehicular speeds is one approach. I would say it's probably the low-hanging fruit. Not that it's the easiest, but it's an actionable one you can do, all the way up to, potential routes for relocating the 52 bypass. Okay. Improve pedestrian safety and accessibility, so fill in sidewalk gaps. So I'd want to identify specific locations where there's a gap in the sidewalk, both between current, might be a neighborhood in the downtown or two different neighborhoods, but also just because of the maybe leapfrog nature of some of the development, just needing to make those connections. I think this is where I would want to talk about who's responsible, if at all, for paying for this. So it might be, a sidewalk that needs to get poured that's 20 feet. That one might be one the village is willing to do. But there might be somewhere where you're like looking at 200 linear feet. Like that's not you. That might be working with the county or the park district or a future developer. So I think just giving that priority or that phasing is something we can talk about in the plan. The plan should talk about improved bicycle safety, so new paths, improved connectivities. So how does a pedestrian move through the space? How does a bicyclist move through this space? Could be shared infrastructure, could be multi-use path, could be separated infrastructure. So it's stuff that we'll want to talk about. Implement recommendations from the downtown plan. So beautify streetscapes and facades, encourage new businesses to locate into the downtown, improve pedestrian activity. So what are the amenities that you can put in place to make it a more inviting environment for pedestrians in that area? Encourage new industrial development around existing industrial or along the village's western boundary. This one we talked about in a couple of different stakeholder discussions, as well as at the visioning workshop, is identifying kind of an area that's most appropriate for industrial development. The western boundary, coming up against what's going on in Joliet was one that was brought up quite a bit. So just knowing that that's an opportunity that we can talk about in the plan. Any questions or comments about that?
Well, I would just add, at least you're saying here we're encouraging it. What area we all may want something like that, but I'm not really sure there's a defined area at this point and whether we really want to encourage it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you apply geography to a lot of these topics is when this becomes more challenging. That is just the nature of the planning process. So I think the main thing to do is kind of working through, starting with what we did at Outreach and what we're doing even now, is I think we all agree to some of these concepts and these ideas, but when you put it to paper, where should this go? The plan does need to be that kind of specific, and it needs to say it should be here and not here. And that's the fair certainty that you want to build in for a developer or an investor, but also for property owners. Everybody needs to know what the plan is. So, okay. Identify areas for new community and park facilities to accommodate future population growth. That's going to be a very generalized bubble. This goes back to that needs assessment about your parks and open space as they are now. Again, it's not that the village is responsible for it, but you're responsible for insisting, promoting, requiring that people incorporate parks and open space into future development. So if you're going to build a new subdivision, that needs to be a consideration, and then what the handover looks like. Utilize gateway signage, public art, and placemaking to denote Manhattan from surrounding communities. So just establishing your brand and putting that throughout the communities and areas that throughout the community in areas that you feel this is where you make the transition and you're in Manhattan. You want to make sure that it's thoughtfully placed. Maybe not always necessarily right at your municipal boundary line. It might be, this is something we talk about in downtowns all the time. You want to place your gateway when you're in the downtown, not when you're close or when you can almost see it. It's when you're there. That's when you should strike that balance of sort of denoting your downtown entry point with where it should feel like your downtown. So just as an example. So those are some of the draft plan topics. Not to say that those are all of them. Those are just some that I think pulling out some of the key themes and ideas from both the vision statement process and the goals process and what we heard during visioning workshops and some of the online feedback. These are I'll say the 13 big issues that stuck out to us. I mean, maybe before we move on, the last part was just next steps. Is there something that you feel we missed? Is there a big idea that we should be talking about or be more direct about when we start thinking about what the draft plan topics might be? And we still have a lot of work on these, by the way, but any thoughts? Anything you think we missed?
Oh, go ahead. Good. I just had a question. It seems like solar farms are trying to come in Will County left and right. I did send stuff to the board about solar farms. Is there a way to put something in our comp plan that kind of would identify a better location than others? Not saying we're for it or against it, but I would say that in certain areas it's more relevant to have a solar farm than it would be in main, right in an intersection or blocking some of our future growth.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there's areas, this kind of goes back to like you might be open to solar farms, but when you start putting a geography to it, maybe you're not as open to it. Like this specifically is an area that is okay for it. So yeah, the plan can talk to that. That might also be something that you need to update in your code. You may need to provide a bit more specificity about what it means to have a solar farm in Manhattan. Put some requirements to them. So yeah, that's something we can definitely talk about, and we'll add to the list. Anybody else?
I was just going to make a comment. I think we covered it somewhere, but just making a comment about open space.
Yeah, I think we've collapsed it with parks, and that's probably a mistake. There's a difference between like a program activated park and then open space. So that, to me, goes back to some of the themes in the vision statement about preserving the character and the charm and the open space. So we can make sure that that's integrated into this as well. Anybody else? Okay. Well, and if you do have comments, I'm one of those people who leave a meeting and then I had like 1,000 ideas. I would say if you could pass those to Mark, he'll get them to us. You know, we're not moving into this tomorrow, so we have some time. I'd say maybe over the next week or two, if you have thoughts as you go through the community outreach summary, the existing conditions, or even the draft document that we just talked about here, you know, pass that to Mark. He'll get it to our team. We'll refine our materials and get that going before we start moving into the plan. So there's still an opportunity. I think when we put this up on the project website too, we'll get feedback from the community. We'll want to make sure we're folding that into the next steps of the plan. So the next steps of the plan are just that. So through September and October, we'll prepare a more refined key recommendations memo. That's like it's a fancy way of saying the outline of the plan. So what essentially it is we'll break down the anticipated chapters of the document, which we feel like we have a pretty good handle on now. But what we're talking about in those sections, in those chapters, is what we want to outline in this document. So it'll give an intent of what the chapter wants to address, and then a series of topic points. So, you know, an example might be for land use and development might be a chapter, and in that we'll talk about the land use classifications, we'll talk about the land use plan, we'll talk about a growth strategy. It'll break down what the topics of the plan in that chapter are going to provide. With that will come a future land use plan. I'm going to call that the preliminary future land use plan. It's going to be very draft. It's going to be our team's initial take on what the future land use plan could be. We probably are going to have options that we want to discuss. The plan would be to come back and do another village board meeting. I'm going to call it like 2B. So it's this, but this is 2A. We're going to come back to 2B. Be a working session to just kind of go through what the land use plan is trying to accomplish. That's ultimately when we get to a land use plan, we'd like to make the preliminary plan memo, or I'm sorry, the key recs memo and the preliminary land use plan, a public document. We'll put it on the website. We'll collect feedback. Once we have all of that completed, then we'll move on to the actual draft plan itself. So then we'll get into the comprehensive land use elements, which are essentially transportation, land use, community facilities, parks and open space, natural areas, that type of thing. So we'll be back in September, October to meet with the board to go through that exercise. November and December, we'll be back to present then a document that's going to look most like the actual comprehensive plan. So that's what you'll see in November and December. And then January and February, you know, fingers crossed, we'll be working through the implementation strategy, which is going to take that comprehensive plan, the land use elements, and start providing some specificity in a matrix. It's like a 2-3 page matrix that just gives you the actions that you should be, you know, shooting for. Really, when you're meeting either on a monthly basis, it's something that you're going to want to check on a yearly basis. It's a checklist, and you just want to make sure that you're accomplishing these actions because they help you achieve your recommendations and your goals. Every 5 to 7 years, you're probably going to want to assess it and make sure that it's working. So that's what's coming in January with the full comprehensive plan. We'll do a community open house to kind of go through the entire document, and then we'll start going through the adoption process, ideally through February and March. So, all right, I threw a lot at you there. Oh, let me highlight. So the highlighted parts are direct village board meetings. That said, you know, I mean, obviously we'll be back through the adoption process and the open house. So there's a couple of different opportunities beyond just today where we'll be back to talk about this plan document with you. Okay, I threw a lot at you there, so I appreciate you letting me walk through those different elements. I always say this is kind of like the fun part of the project. It's the hard part where we got to transition out of kind of that homework phase and get into the plan writing phase, but this is where we start getting into the document that I think everybody's eager to see and better understand. So I appreciate you giving us your time tonight. I look forward to any additional comments that you send to Mark. We'll make sure we incorporate them in, and we'll see you here soon in September or October.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So there's no public comment? Does anyone need a break for 2 minutes? Is everyone good? 2-minute break? All right. Well, can we take a 2-minute recess? Just- Thank you for the recess. I just figured if anyone needed a break. That was a long presentation, but an important one. So moving on to the consent agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. It consists of August 6, 2024 Village Board meeting minutes, August 6, 2024 executive session meeting minutes not for release, approval of August 27th, 2024 bills list. So if anyone would like anything removed for further discussion, if not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
No,
Roll-
second.
Roll call?
Neighbors.
Yes.
Dilling.
Yes.
Beamsterboer.
Yes.
Adamski.
Yes.
Doyle.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. First item under new business, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of not to exceed 6 million of general obligation bonds, Series 2024 in the Village of Manhattan. So what this is referring to is bonds that are going to be needed to complete the well treatment facility in Century East. We've already received 3.5 million from Congressman Rush's office, and then we've also got another $1 million before that, I believe. So we're right around $4.5 million, but this thing costs quite a bit of money, and we were waiting on an IEPA loan, but that's no longer available, so we have to issue bonds for it. So that's what this is about. So anyone have any questions? And Glenn can answer them, or there's a couple representatives here.
We have Ray Fricke, our counsel here, as well as Adam Holstein from Baird, answer any questions you might have. The ordinance is parameters, so it's not to exceed certain parameters, but if that goes down, then we can lock in those rates or beneficial terms.
Flexibility.
Yes.
And Mayor, this was separate from the, that 1% loan, right, that we couldn't get? That was
Yeah.
a different project, right?
Yeah, for the IEPA loan that we're trying to get at
Yeah.
1% rate? Yeah, that's,
It's the same project, but we couldn't get that financing. And if we don't use the Bobby Rush money of $3.452 million, we lose that. So we have so much time to use that. So that's why we're going with the bond financing.
I just want to say thank you to this board and to Glenn and to the finance staff. John, been here quite a long time, and it's been a while since I've seen Ray Fricky to come here to do a bond for the Village of Manhattan. And that's a very positive thing, that we've been able to live within our means, but this unfunded state mandate is really killing us. And the best way to do it is to do a bond and pay it off through the bond, basically a loan. Other projects we have been paid in cash or paid in full from other sources, and we've been very, very good at it. And that's because of this board and finance. I can't remember, Ray, you could probably remember the last bond you did for us without refinancing. I mean, it was 2005, maybe? Yeah, it's been quite a lot of years. So,
There's only 7 years left on our current existing bonds. 2 we had refinanced, and then we have an IEP loan. They all expire at the same time.
so my point is that the board, at least from my vision of the board, they can speak for themselves, doesn't take this lightly. They don't go out and just bond. I've seen towns, and we all seen towns, that are floating bonds as much as they can, and now they're $5-10 million in debt. This board has not done that throughout the years. I don't see it being the future plan, but when the state mandates you to do something, you got only 2 ways to afford it, is to drain all your reserves, and if God forbid something happened, and you don't have any money, or bond it out, pay it in increments, and that's what we're doing. So I would say I would motion to approve the bonds.
It also, ironically, doesn't it let us construct it a lot quicker, that we don't have to go through IEPA? So, I mean, that's another thing too, but thank you, Dave. So Dave has a motion. Anyone else have any other questions?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Dilling?
Yes.
Beamsterboer?
Yes.
Adamski?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Neighbors?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing the purchase of 2 2025 Agate Black, so black metallic Ford police interceptors and outfitting to be used for patrol operations. These 2 new police vehicles go along with the additional police officers we budget for this fiscal year. So if anyone has any questions, the cost is $42,000. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. So the amount is $97,800, and then the outfitting in the amount of $42,000 for the patrol operations.
What kind of Fords are they?
Other than the Ford Explorers, the police interceptor.
Who's doing the outfitting of them?
I have 3 bids here. The lowest bid was from EVT.
All right, thank you.
So if anyone has any other comments or questions, if not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the purchase of 2 2025 black metallic Ford police interceptors from Durazio Ford in the amount of $97,802.06 and outfitting in the amount of $42,000 to be used for patrol operations.
Motion.
Second.
Beamsterboer?
Yes.
Adamski?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Neighbors?
Yes.
Dilling?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance requiring the placement of a stop sign within the Village of Manhattan. This goes for the stop sign over at Smith Road and Foxford Drive. These signs are necessary to control traffic in the entrance of the new junior high. As we discussed at the last board meeting, these signs were requested by the school, and it sounded like everyone agreed, so this is kind of just making it official. So I'll entertain a motion to approve an ordinance requiring the placement of stop signs within the Village of Manhattan, Smith Road and Foxford Drive.
Second.
Roll call?
Adamski?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Neighbors?
Yes.
Dilling?
Yes.
Beamsterboer?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a resolution approving the purchase of a used snowplow truck. This snowplow adds to our fleet and goes towards our plan to have each of our Public Works crews members being in their own snowplow. So 1 additional plow is still on order, and it should be here hopefully next fiscal year. This is a used truck. It's a 2010 Freightliner, and it came from the village of Flossmoor, and the amount is $35,000. So any questions with that? I know John can go over that a little bit more.
John has got one question. I mean, it's a 2010, with only 35,000 miles. That's,
The snowplow trucks, they don't get used a lot.
yeah, that's true,
If it
right?
snows a lot, they use it. I know they use it for some, in the summer, they use it for dirt. It's one of their dirt trucks. So it's not like going out every day. We have some trucks too, 2008s and 9s that are basically the same type of mileage on them as well.
And it comes with the plow blade and everything?
Yeah, it's fully outfitted. The only thing we have to do is get a radio in there for our band. It's got the plow, the belly plow. It's got actually a wet system on there, so we can use brine on it as well. It's got the spreader on it already, so it's totally full, fully loaded. So it should be a good truck. Actually, I had our mechanic and Jim Bennett, they went and checked it out, and they drove it, and it runs out nice. It's going to be a nice truck. Like I said, it's a used truck. It's beat up, but it's got a stainless steel box on it, so it's not. Through the pictures you see, it looks a little beat up, but that's just the paint that's pretty much coming off of there. It's going to need a little work, but it's something that we can do in house, and it'll get us through until we get a new truck next winter.
It's a good idea, John. It saves a lot of money. We can get it, we won the bid, we got it, or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it went in front of their board for, we proposed at 35, and they accepted, and I told them, once we come through here, we'll let them know on Tuesday.
compared to a brand-new truck, which would cost
You're looking at 275 right now?
$275.
Which a
Pay
plow blade
35.
is probably 20 grand.
I was gonna say, you can't outfit the truck for that price, John. Did a heck of a job finding it.
We looked for a while, and
I know we've bought in the past, we bought trucks from Shanahan Township in the past, that you have looked through and
Peter,
brought.
we had, correct.
You do a great job when you want to use truck, you find the right ones, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, smart, thanks, Jim.
I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a resolution approving the purchase of a 2010 Freightliner snowplow truck from the village of Flossmoor in the amount of $35,000.
Motion.
Second,
Second. All right, roll call?
Doyle.
Yes.
Neighbors.
Yes.
Dilling.
Yes.
Beamster.
yes.
Adamski.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding, or also known as a MOU, increasing the salary for the crew leader position by and between the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 150 and the Village of Manhattan. This MOU adjusts the crew leader wage scale to attract a qualified candidate and to make the salary competitive with other public work crew leader positions. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding, increasing the salary for the crew leader position by and between International Union of Operating Engineers Local 150 and the Village of Manhattan.
Motion,
Second.
Second?
Any roll call, any questions for a roll call or discussion? A roll call then?
Neighbors.
Yes.
Dilling.
Yes.
Beamster.
yes.
Adamski.
Yes.
Doyle.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is to promote Jim Bennett to crew leader in Public Works. Jim is going on 9 years at the Village of Manhattan and has proven to be an asset with the village with his many skills. This position is our Local 150 collective bargaining agreement, and we are at a time in which we need to fill that position. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the promotion of Jim Bennett to crew leader in Public Works at a rate of $37 per hour.
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Dilling.
Yes.
Beamster.
Yes.
Adamski.
Yes.
Doyle.
Yep.
Neighbors.
Yes.
Can I add something here? I just want to compliment Jim and the whole crew, John, that you have. It's the hardest working bunch I've ever seen, and Jim, you deserve it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Motion carries. Okay. Congratulations, Jim. Next item on the agenda is authorization to hire temporary election clerks for the early voting in 2024 general election. So to better serve the voting public, the village is teaming up and partnering with the township, so the Manhattan Township, to hire dedicated temporary election clerks to staff the early voting at the Village Hall. This will make things more efficient for both our staff and early voters. And with this year's presidential election, it'll probably be quite a large turnout. So the good thing about this is that we're going to be able to have township residents come into the village to vote early. In the past, that's never been able to be done, so this is seems like a good thing to have the township and Manhattan residents come in and early vote. So, anyone have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
How long will this job last? How many hours? I
So
mean, will it
it's-
be here during the voting hours at time?
8:30, or do you want to speak on that? So,
Yeah, Bob. So early voting is for a period of 2 weeks. It's Monday through Friday. It starts October 21st. It ends November 1st. And the hours will be 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then each of these election clerks will be, Jeff and I are going to work together to schedule them. So we have 3 full-time clerks in the room at all times.
Thank you.
but there'll be more that we're, proposing here just to fill in the
Yeah,
spots.
we're proposing 5.
Okay.
But we'll only use 3
Yeah.
unless needed, but.
Yeah.
So I'd like to entertain a
Is
mo.
it financed jointly?
Yeah, we'll be splitting the
Okay.
cost with the township and us, the village. So
Okay.
it seems pretty minimal. I mean, especially if we only need 3. It's $20 an hour, so it's a 2-week job, temporary, so no benefits or anything. So that, I'd like,
No problems with our existing unions?
no.
Has everybody checked? That's all I want to know.
I did check, and I did check with the union, and they weren't interested in handling this position this year.
As long as they're okay with us using temporary, because sometimes they don't. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that's not covered in the collective bargaining
Right.
agreement, so.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion to authorize to hire temporary election clerks Linda Barton, Rebecca Bauk, Gwen Petrella, Norma Schutz, and Raymond Wertleka for a period of 2 weeks, October 21st, 2024 through November 1st, 2024, at a rate of $20 per hour.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call?
Beebsterboer.
Yes.
Adamski.
Yes.
Doyle.
Yes.
Neighbors.
Yes.
Dilling.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance increasing the maximum number of video game licenses to be effect and only one pursuant to Section 9-3-11 of the Village of Manhattan Code of Ordinances. This has to deal with Arrowhead Smokeworks to install video gaming machines in a new restaurant. It's already been indicated, and it's per the agreement of the lease, that he's not allowed to have more than 3 machines, so that's already been agreed upon. But this allows him to get the video gaming in his facility. So, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve an ordinance increasing the maximum number of video gaming licenses to be in the effect at any one time pursuant to Section 9-3-11 of the Village of Manhattan Code of Ordinances for Arrowhead Smokeworks.
Motion?
Second.
Any discussion?
I guess just a big question. At the same time that he opens up, this license is activated, or?
The license will be active, but I believe it could take several months from the state to get this stuff, to get the machines.
Okay,
So
so
they-
there'd be no scenario, I guess what I'm working through my head here is that the food side is not ready,
Oh,
not
no.
open, and the gambling side,
No,
okay. I was just wondering.
in the state, I think takes a little while. So did I hit the motion?
We have a motion and a second.
Roll call?
Adamski.
Yes.
Doyle.
Yes.
Neighbors.
Yes.
Dilling.
Yes.
Beamsterboer.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance creating a new section 1-8-14, the prohibition of elected officials within Title Administrative. Chapter 8, Village Officers and Employees, General Provisions of the Village of Manhattan Code of Ordinances. I know, probably don't know what that means, but, so this is a new ordinance for Manhattan. If approved, it would prevent all elected officials from serving as paid employees of the village other than their official duties as elected officials. Any questions?
Motion.
Oh, motion.
Second.
Roll call?
Doyle.
Yes.
Neighbors.
Yes.
Dilling.
Yes.
Beamster
Yes.
Adamski.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. All right, so that's it for the regular meeting, and then we're going to be going into executive session in a little bit. So for me, the next board meeting on September 3rd has been canceled because it's the day after Labor Day, the Labor Day weekend, so we canceled that. And the next meeting will be on September 17th, Tuesday. We moved this one because of the comp plan presentation. That's why we canceled the last week's meeting. So we kind of made a couple changes. The fourth annual Labor Day party is Sunday, September 1st from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Round Barn. Fireworks will be at 8:30. The Labor Day parade is on Monday again, September 2nd at 11 a.m. in the downtown area. It'll start from Anna McDonald and proceed down Route 52 onto North Street and into Thelma. So far we have 36 entries. And then I just want to give the board an update on a couple meetings that are going to be taking place with the school has requested a meeting with us. They're finishing out the development of the new junior high, and there's a couple concerns that they have with some of the sidewalks and some of the signage, some of the crosswalk signage and things like that. It's a kind of a question, is it our responsibility to do the improvements, or is it the new school's responsibility? So we'll be meeting on that on next Thursday to see what their suggestion is or what their request is. I just want to let everybody know. I do have a meeting scheduled with Terry Darcy and Joliet manager in the end of September. So that's just to discuss the boundary agreement, and since we're doing the comp plan, I think it is kind of important to try to meet with them and discuss it. Jeff's trying to schedule a meeting with Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. I don't know if everyone's heard that. They're trying to make trucks bigger and heavier and longer, and it's just, it's the opposite of the direction we're trying to go. So this coalition stands up against that, and, you know, we're just gonna have an initial meeting and see what they have to offer.
What are they planning? The gross weight is 80,000 now, right?
There's legislation that they're trying to prevent allowing a 10% increase across the board on weight only,
Like,
but changing truck routes. So there could be some non-designated truck routes that go to Class 2, which would then change the length.
okay.
So just trying to stay up on all these changes. And like I said, we're also meeting with Jeff Ronaldson this Friday for the, just another initial meeting with their plan, Will County and their roads, what they're trying to accomplish and where we fit in that as Manhattan. So I'll bring back some details of what they have prepared already and what they're thinking, just so we could start the process to be involved. And then the solar farm thing, I did send everyone some information, a map and some suggestions. I don't know if the board would like to just give me some thoughts or ideas or what anyone's concerns are, because we're working with the township and the fire department to come up with, I guess, some basic guidelines. It really doesn't affect the village. I shouldn't say it. It affects the village, but they're not going to be in the village most likely. But if we're all on the same page with the township and the fire department, when we go to object, and if it is in the comp plan, we have a strong case for objection on certain areas that could protect us from being swallowed up by solar farms. They actually call them solar systems now, I think, instead of solar farms, because they're not farming anything, but, so I just wanted to.
So if I can ask the attorney, is there any way, or is it possible to create a new designation in the zoning for wind or solar farms? And then we could tweak our zoning maps to match what the board comes up with the areas. I know, you know, instead of industrial or I3 or I2 or commercial 2, can we make our own designation for solar and wind energy?
The one thing I don't know off the top of my head is any, statutory authority that addresses green energy and whether there's a prohibition on that. So we can look into it as a short answer, but I don't know off the top of my head. I don't want to give you the wrong advice.
I understand if you could look into that for us, because
Yeah,
that could make a big difference, because if we're sitting here getting the comp plan down and we can designate, then we would designate where we want them. But if they fall into I1 or I2, then it's a little iffy, because they fall into our, whatever zoning class the solar farm is. They can say, hey, we meet your zoning, we want to be here.
Yeah.
You know, if it's something that we really need to look into.
No, that's a good idea. I just, that's why I threw that map out there, just, it's not as strict as a zoning or anything, but it just kind of gives a guideline for when, I just feel like there's no direction with the solar farms. They're just approaching any landowner they can find, first landowner to do a lease with them, that's where they put it. There's no structure or reason why they just blotch it everywhere. And I thought if we had more of a distinct area that, like, you know, kind of by the peaker plant and, you know, just different areas that we're like, oh, that's okay. You know, that doesn't really affect us right now. Because they're tying these up for 20 to 40 years, these landowners, so a lot can change in 40 years.
Right.
But no, I get your point. I mean, that's a good way. That's why I brought up for the comp plan. I think it's good that we incorporate that, since there's already been 70 permits requested in Will County this year already. So, you know, the thought was after the township, the board, and then the township board kind of come up with some guidelines of certain criteria. Doesn't mean we have to accept anything, but certain criteria, setbacks, berms, and then we can go to the Will County Land Use Department and talk to them and say, just so you know, here's kind of what we would consider more than this, you know, I don't know, like kind of uncharted territory, but.
I mean, that's your question.
Yeah, do you want it on the west side, or do you want it on the south side? I
Question
mean,
you gotta ask. And then decide at that point, when you answer that question, where you're gonna put them.
Right.
and the thing is, they won't be, most likely, we can try to request annexation, but I don't think that they would annex in, so it would still be not village property. But that's, just like I said, I just wanted your guys' input. I think there's a meeting September 10th with the township, so if we can come up with something to give them, we can, maybe Mark wants to put it together, he could send it to them so that they could review it. They're coming up with their own ideas as well, and just see where it goes. I don't know, but.
Maybe it's just see what restrictions are.
Well, I know there's a lot of legislation that protects them, so, all right.
So can you use them as a buffer is what I'm asking. So you have a North Point trying to build in Joliet, if you had a solar farm phased in right in between, and which is no traffic, no trucks, it's just the solar farm. I know people some don't like them, some
Yeah.
hate them. But just I'm looking at land use only, and you buffer that into your comp plan coming into the heart of downtown,
Yeah.
it may be a way to go,
And that's,
to keep
that's what the map
keep the
shows.
big
on-
walls away from you.
On the whole west side is like a blanket area that we're like, yeah, it's okay on the west side, and then on the southeast corner by the peaker plant and all the substations, I mean, it's gonna be far ways away from us reaching there anytime soon. Just a thought, but yeah, no, I mean, these are all inputs that if we can kind of collectively get them together, we could submit them to the township and see where it goes, Yeah. Okay, so that's enough of me talking. So, Lucy? All right. Justin's not here, so Bob?
I got a couple things. I want to thank John and Carrie for the beads, okay? You came through. That's been a big thing. Sort of an inside joke. Mark, handicap parking, where are we at with that?
We actually had sent letters out maybe about a month and a half ago to all the owners of the businesses that don't have handicap stalls. We had just hired the code enforcement officer, so I'm going to have him do a reassessment, and then at that point, once we identify the remaining ones, we're going to go ahead and send additional letters and go from there. So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Chief, thanks for the traffic. Guys been doing a lot of traffic, slowing things down. I appreciate that. And that's about it.
Thank you. Dave?
Just want to welcome Jim to the management area, and I think you deserve it. I've seen your work out there. You do a heck of a job, and it's well deserved. And speaking of your beads, Bob, I was heading to the doctor earlier today. They were striping Smith Road, and I watched the guy throw the beads onto the paint, so I know they're there. So thank you, guys. That's all I have.
Ron?
Nothing really, just since we're talking about Labor Day, the mayor's talking about that and festivities, I would just add that don't forget to visit the pet station. That's about it. But Kristen's helping do a lot of sharing around with all the stuff that's going on with that, so that's all I got.
All right, thank you. Tommy?
Jim, congratulations. Known you for many years. You're well deserved. You always do a good job. Don't even have to question it. And we got the holiday weekend coming up. Everybody have a good time, watch the parade. And that's it for me.
Thanks. Shelley? Anything?
Congratulations, Jim Bennett. We always joke in the office that we would love to clone him. So we all think he's wonderful. I think it's well-deserved, so congrats, Jim. Couple announcements. I just wanted to mention that the last cruise night of the summer is September 11th, 4:30 to 7:30. We also have our next community-wide garage sale coming up on September 13th and 14th. Registrations will be due on September 6th. And then in the next week, we'll be rolling out Scarecrows on Parade again, so registration will open up, and that will be available till October 11th. Registration forms are available online and at Village Hall, and the frames can be picked up here. And then I just want to say good luck to all the Manhattan School District 114 kids. Tomorrow's their first day of school. Yay, parents.
Yay, Lucy.
Yay. Good luck.
All right, Jeff?
I just want to let the village board know that the electric aggregation plan has come to an end, or is ending in September, and residents are starting to receive letters stating the program's ended, and we have no plans to continue it. There's no deals out there that makes it any better for our residents than just to pay ComEd. So if they choose to get in some other plan on their own, that's great, but we don't have anything for them right now.
Thanks. Mark?
I just wanted to say, once the consultant provides the updated PowerPoint presentation, I'll go ahead and send that to the board. If you have any questions or any changes to that, go ahead and send those to me, and my monthly report's in the packet as well.
Thank you. John?
Again, I'm glad Jim has joined the management crew. I've known Jim for a while now, and Jim's very passionate about the Village of Manhattan and all the work that he does for the Village of Manhattan. So I think, like I said, it was a great choice having Jim come on board. So I can't be any happier because, like I said, he'll relieve a lot of stuff off of me, and now he's going to have to deal with some of that himself.
Welcome to Manhattan.
So also just a couple quick things. I just got a quote today from Robinson. We're going to start doing the flow test and the smoke test out in the older part of town, so we can see if we can locate some of this I&I to help with our wastewater plant. So hopefully maybe the next meeting I'll bring that to the board so we can get that rolling. We did get a $25,000 grant just recently from the county to help towards the Trash Street Drainage Program project that we're doing. So we have to use that money up by this year. So we already talked to the engineer. They are already planning on sending some bills over so we can get that $25,000 and use that up right away as well. And then they can tell us we can go ahead and reapply for it again back in January. So we'll do hopefully we'll do the second part in next year, so we'll be able to apply for some more money next year for that project as well. So as of that's all I got for right now.
Thanks. Carrie, do you want anything added?
Baker Road, we'll be seeing some closure signage going up. We're required, since we are closing the full road and we're utilizing county road to do that, we're required to put up signage 2 weeks prior to actually closing it so that everybody's aware of it for the recon for that. So you'll see that soon. And then the MFT project is underway. All that's being under construction right now. And then we've got the water main projects that we'll be bringing to you in the next month. So lots going on.
And I think I asked this before, the Baker Road project, once they start it, they're going to continue until it's completed, right? There's no
Correct.
fill-in work or nothing? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
That's one of the reasons why we're shutting the road down.
Good.
Containers can stay on there.
All right.
Yeah, the lag has
I think we
been,
talked about it. I just
yep.
couldn't remember.
The lag on starting has been with the concrete structures that they had to order. There's a lead time on those right now. So.
All right. Thanks. Glenn?
I just want to say that we finished wrapping up the implementation phase of the new ERP system. There's challenges and hiccups along the road, and I appreciate the staff's patience and working with us to try and get that established. Also, we got a new utility bill system out there that I hope the residents are patient as well with that, learning the new utility bill. that's about it.
Thank you. Chief?
Just want to congratulate Jim. He's all right. You know, you got the, he's a good guy. He's done good work for us in the police department. When Public Works as a whole, you know, whenever we say something, they jump on it so quick. You don't even know they're there before they're gone. So I appreciate it. Appreciate how you guys help us out. Just a few reminders this Saturday at the, we have the first Cops and Bobbers event at the park there by the firehouse, Park Road there. It's from 9 to 1. Exciting, we have 67 entries as of today. I'm hoping it gets bigger, see how that works out with the community, and then obviously the parade and everything like that. And then on the 13th of September, we have the first glow ride with the police, which is a nighttime bike ride with a bunch of glow products and different safety events, things of that nature. Then last weekend's events yielded 0 calls for service, so I just thought I'd throw that out there to you guys. And, we appreciate your support, and as we grow as a department and as a village, the purchasing of more vehicles and helps us out greatly. So thank you to the board.
Do you know, by any chance, I had a resident reach out to me, I think it's, I think I know the answer, but does anyone know how old you have to be to have a fishing license? Is it under 15 you don't need a fishing license? Or do you know? Because 15 and under, okay. All right. Okay. And then Terry couldn't be here today. He had another obligation with us for a school board meeting that he had to attend, and since we rescheduled it, that's why he couldn't be here, so. With that, that's the end of me. I'm not missing anyone? Okay, so we are going to go into executive session. It's going to be lengthy maybe, so if staff wants to leave, since it's been a long meeting, you're free to go. It's, you know, up to your choice. There'll be no action after the meeting, so I'd like to entertain a motion to enter executive session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, appointed or elected officials, and collective bargaining, and then probable, imminent, and pending litigation.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call?
Neighbors?
Yes.
Dilling?
Yes.
Beamsterboer?
Yes.
Adamski?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Motion to open regular session.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call?
Adamski?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Neighbors?
Yes.
Dilling?
Yes.
Beamsterboer?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. No action from executive session, so motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned.